Ready for the mosh pit, Shaka Bra.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to StrangeCast, Player One vs. World's Life is Strange podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Adnan. My co-host Adam is here. Adam, you here?
I am here, and to prove I am not lying, in where I live, it is -8 with a -22-degree wind chill. I'm cold. It's cold.
Last
But
2
I'm
months
here.
of North Dakota as well, I believe.
What's that?
Last 2 months in North Dakota, I believe, as well now.
Last 3 months.
Last
yeah.
3 months.
Because I'll be moving end of March to a location I will not tell you just yet.
Yes.
It's going to be warmer though. Warmer than -22 degrees.
In 2025, Michael Jordan is coming back. Welcome back, because this is the first episode of 2025. StrangeCast will turn 4 years old, I believe, in March this year, which will be a long period. Was it 4 or 5 years? I think it's 4 years. Yeah, it'll be 4 years old in March. And then also as well, we are now on episode 90, so the March to 100 begins, Adam, as well. We'll hit the 100 episode milestone. Well, technically, we'll hit it earlier because Jonathan Panetta's episode and Erica Mori's are split episodes, but I always considered them just as one because we did them in that kind of vein. So we'll hit 100 episodes in 2025, which will be something. And obviously, we're now in the post Life is Strange double exposure release. We'll be moving into Lost Record season, so you'll start seeing topics move in and out. I think this is one of the few episodes where double exposure doesn't completely dominate the entire conversation. And obviously, this month will be special because in January as well, it's 10 years of Life is Strange. So the first Life is Strange turns 10 years old, and it's a landmark moment for the franchise, considering the ups and downs and all kinds of mixed things that we've had with Life is Strange. But before we start, as always, if you are new here, please do consider dropping subscribe on the channel, turn notifications, like the video, share with your friends, help support the channel. We're almost at 1,500 subscribers, so if you can subscribe to the videos, keep up to date with all the content we produce. And StrangeCast is available on all podcast services. So we're available on Spotify with the video version. We're available on Apple Podcasts, so do go and check us out there. You can go and rate us and download us. We have about 276 followers on Spotify. We have 40 ratings we just hit now as well on Spotify with 4.8 ratings. So thank you so much for that. So go and check us out, because you can get instant access to your episodes as soon as they become available. So Adam, we're back here for a very interesting episode. We only got one news piece because obviously we're starting at the beginning of the year and the industry is in complete shutdown mode at this point. So StrangeCast only has one news topic, and then we have a main section which I think will be fun and a little bit of interesting, the build up to 10 years of Life is Strange. So Adam, should we kick things off in our first piece of news as well? Or our one and only piece of news, if anything? That'll be a better way of putting it. So we're going to Twitter here, as you can see, a little bit of graphic that we got here. Michel is our main topic here. Michel, Life is Strange 1 and 2 co-director, Life is Strange co-creator. And Michel was asked on Twitter recently, was asked if Chloe has her hair dyed or if the blue faded out in the away pitch in Life is Strange 2. And Michel responded to a user here, Catty Knit, who you can follow as well, does really, really great artwork as well on Twitter, including a comics. I'll show you in a minute. So Michel said here as well, in my mind, it was a greener dye. I've never wanted to pigeonhole Chloe as the blue-haired girl. If you look at my first concept art of her, she had remnants of pink dye in her hair. I've always imagined Chloe going with different colors depending on mood and moments in her life. So I thought that was a nice little bit of input from Michel, and I'm just going to pull this one up here as well, which is another part of this. So just pulling these up quickly. Usually I have this a bit more streamlined, but I'm going to just do it as you will. So Michel here as well responded to another user who asked a question, and they put, so she went from pink to blue to green. Is that a Ramona Flores reference? I know Max mentioned Scott Pilgrim in her journal, so maybe it's on purpose. Michel said this was one of our inspiration. Also, Clementine in Eternal Studios of the Spotless Mind was another, which again makes sense there. I'm going to plug Catty here as well, which you can go and check out the work that she's doing here, which I think is great. I love her artwork as well, so go and check that out.
Nice.
And then finally, Adam, before we get into this as well, I'm going to pull up one thing which will, again, it's one of those like little things of Life is Strange which keeps the magic. And this was from Thomas Murch, who does pop up in the comments sometimes, hopefully pops up in this video, and put here saying, I like how I should have realized back when first played Chaos Theory, but never actually managed it. Curse my utter lack of knowledge about hair dyes. I suppose Chloe felt a bit less pink hair after Rachel disappeared. And as you can see there, Chloe's got shades of pink in the blue, which I thought was a really lovely little touch we can pick back up on. So Adam, yeah, Michel again adding to the lore and mystique of Life is Strange, because I think in itself, I think the general consensus for people was that Chloe's hair had faded, the color in the away photo, but obviously Michel has kind of given a bit more exposition, which is that you know, Chloe has almost this Hayley Williams-esque vibe of dyeing the hair in certain moods, which I feel.
Bring up Hayley Williams.
Of course. If anyone comments badly about Hayley Williams, they will be like struck down in the comments very viciously by the Play One Whistle YouTube account. I was wanted to know what you think about it, because obviously Michel has kind of given his input there. When I saw Blue Haired Girl, I was like, okay.
I wonder if that's like a direct knock. And like, I wonder if he played Double Exposure, and like they constantly referred to Chloe as the blue-haired girl, and I wonder if that is like a Kendrick Lamar knock on Double Exposure with that, you know?
Yeah, it is interesting.
Because Michel is not one for straight up like confrontation. He's not like me. He's much more adult than I am. So let's put it that way.
He's very mindful. He's very demure about his approach.
Yeah, he is very demure about his clapbacks, but I need to work on that. But yeah, no, I wonder if that is, or if he's just like, he knows in the lore of it. It's like a lot of like people will say like, oh, the blue haired girl. Like, in fact, blue haired girl has a connotation to it. At least in America, it is like, it's just really alt left wing, like blue haired. Like that's your dye. It's blue hair, so there's a connotation to that. The other thing I think about is going back to Double Exposure. This is why you need to bring on the original creator as at least a consultant. You know, there's a reason behind the dyes. There's a reason behind the colors in the hair. And if you just say like, oh, it's just blue hair girl, you know, that you kind of water it down. Like, it's like it's taking a nice whiskey and just dumping a whole bottle of water into it. It's like, is it whiskey anymore? You know, exactly. It's just anybody that puts water in whiskey. I understand why you do it. I get it, but like a little bit, just a little, just like aromas. But like, you dump the whole fucking water in, it's just whatever. I don't care.
Bars, they'll give you whiskey and they'll give you the water separate because they want you to intentionally like cut it yourself.
Yeah,
and it's like. You gauge what your drink is like, and it's like you want to kind of drink.
It's like, listen, if you want to ruin your whiskey the way you want to, like, you ruin it. I'm not ruining it for you, dude. But, but no, that's why you bring on Michel Koch as a consultant, because he knows his characters. He knows why they dye their hair. But whatever. Yeah, no,
it's a big one because we don't speak for Michel. It's just my kind of gauge has always been that I think Michel is very well aware, I believe at least as well, what's going on in terms of the game and stuff. Like he's not blissfully unaware of the online reaction. He actually came out last year and spoke when the Deck 9 developers were getting piled on, and he kind of gave his input with it. He got piled on by another person. I saw when someone came out after him, it's like, you know, he's not actually working in this game, and he's actually just like being very you know, mindful about his like what people do and how they react with it. But he like I've always said, like he played True Colors. You know, you saw him tweet about it. You saw him even like things about it. But the fact that no one from the Don't Know team has said anything about this game is a very telling sign for me. Anything, because I know they got codes for it as well. Like even I know that Luke tweeted that they got codes for it, but it's like when they say nothing, that's for me at least. You know, I've not spoken to any of them for a while, and I wouldn't if anything as well, because they're busy working Lost Records. It's a big push for them going ahead with it, but it's more about like the fact that they haven't tweeted anything Life is Strange related, like majorly about this. So it's like I think he's very well aware of how they've handled Chloe Price, but in itself as well, you're right about him being a consultant in that game, because I repeatedly said it in the review episode that we did, where I was like, you know, it's a character assassination on both Max and Chloe. And it shows as well because it came across so visibly, because like she's just not a blue-haired girl. You're diluting her, as you said, to like a very simplistic form when she's more than that. It's like, you know, Lord Voldemort has a name, which is Lord Voldemort, and it's like he who must not be named, etc. But you can't just dilute Chloe to the blue-haired girl, because like why in itself as well, Max is it in the game, and I'm not just going to bash on Double Exposure and because we've got other things to kind of get on with, and it's like there's more critiquing.
Yeah, it's kicking a dead horse at this point.
Yeah, but it's like when she talks in the game, like sometimes she refers to Chloe as Chloe in her mind, then other times when she talks to other people, she refers to her as blue-haired girl, and it's like I try to see what you're trying to do here, which is trying to gauge trauma in certain levels, but you're not doing it in the right way because this makes no sense. The juxtaposition doesn't work well here in terms of the way you're approaching it. But
Yeah.
I think like in itself, it shows because like there's more lore to Chloe than just like what we know from the games. Because like everyone had that expectation that Chloe's hair had naturally faded out and it just turned into like green over time. But no, it's more about reflectiveness of like the mood. And I think it adds quite a nice layer to a very interesting and very polarizing character for some people. I know Chloe has a very polarizing reception as well, but I think that's what makes her magical in the same way as Max and Rachel, both polarizing characters. But yeah, I think like it's interesting when he gives you little bits like that because it adds to the lore, but that's the missing component of double exposure. And again, not trying to beat a dead horse, it was trying to contextualize it in where we're at right now.
Yeah.
It's like there's that was missing. There was a flavor that was missing where you really need to understand what they're doing. And it's like that away photo added so much more in terms of like, I've seen Michel talk about it before. It's like he's like Chloe and Max aren't smiling in that photo, and it's like there's a reason they aren't smiling because people need to process the decision. It is an important decision because you have to think if you're projecting at the end of the first Life is Strange game, that ending where it's like Chloe and Max escape from Arcadia Bay and you've basically destroyed a town and killed all these people because of one choice, that will have an effect on relationships because like that will be something that will impact both of them. But then it's how you handle that and how you move forward, which is the main thing for those two characters. I.e. the comics did that very well, where it's like you see those two characters heal in their own time and still have like a unique relationship together. But yeah, it's interesting because like what's happened there with double exposure, and then with like when Michel gives these important takes, it just shows you how important that consultancy work was on this game, or with some people. But in itself as well, Don't Nod left that series behind, and then it's like you have to ask those questions.
Yeah.
But it's like, would Don't Nod even want to be consultant on some of this game? Highly likely not. I don't think Michel would want, my personal opinion at least, I don't think Michel would want to work on this game if he didn't have full creative control where he could kind of guide things into certain positions. But it's a big one because it does show you where I think again the weaknesses appear in double exposure in those character plot points as well. And I think I think in itself, this is both important for people to heal, but also it's kind of like, they continue to mourn what happened last year. And it is a big one because it's something that will continue with this podcast as we carry forward, because I know that some people don't listen to this podcast anymore, probably because we're negative about double exposure, but then we probably have more people coming here because we reflect what other people feel. The consensus with that game is very divided. Some people love it, some people hate it. And I'm not narrow-minded enough to know why people don't like it as well. Like, I have read reviews which were glowing of the game, and it's like, okay, that's what you saw in it. And Abby came on here and gave her input. And if I was that narrow-minded, I would shut down the conversation completely and be like, Abby, we're not going to do this anymore because it's like I'm just going down a negative take. But to her perspective is good, even though people completely lost that in some respects. But I think but it's like people go after me. It's like, well, yeah, kind of like it's like, no, it's like that's how we roll, me and her. Like that's how the conversation goes. And it's like she also sees the problems with the game, but she's offering another perspective. And for me, I'm fine with listening to that.
You're telling me that she's not a two-dimensional mind that can only think one thing, and you're fickle because you're three-dimensional and you have depth as a person. You need to be two-dimensional so I can understand you.
Well, yeah, just a little bit.
The internet sucks, by the way. I just want to point that out there.
But you have to see it in the way that I go and like look at things where, and I've always repeatedly said, I don't go and attack other people for liking this game. I've repeatedly said it before. I'm like, if you enjoyed the game, great. I'm glad that you liked it.
If you like it in this economy, in this world, finding joy, go for it.
Yeah,
like the game.
Everything has to have applied criticism, and I do that with everything. Even if I love it as well, I still will apply criticism because I look at both the perspectives of where the good was and the bad was. Like, I don't like The Last of Us Part 2. I know it might be sacrilegious for some people, but I apply criticism, but I go and see what other people think it's good as well. I think you have a measured take of it. And one thing I firmly believe, if anything else, was she came on the podcast with her convictions and belief for what she thought of the game, and same with you, and same with me. Because it's like we came on with different expectations, and they kept changing whilst we were reporting the game and playing the game. So it's like you need to make your own opinions on these kind of things. But to kind of get away from like going completely off topic, I like when Michel adds these kind of like inputs with it, and it's like at that point as well. I think my position has changed on like Life is Strange and like just IPs and franchises, because since that interview I did with Danielle Vivatis on the channel, who was Rachel Amber's mocap actor, she was like, don't get married to your character, because she's like, I don't reprise Rachel in the remaster collection. She's like, never get married to your character because it's like anything can happen. And it's stuck with me since that entire moment, because it's like, it's the truth, because it's like, you can throw your toys out of the pram and be like, Square Enix needs to do this, but if Square Enix wants to do what it does, Square Enix will do what it wants. Like these are mega corporations that will make cream off money as it goes. They'll print off money, and they care more about making a profit, whilst the developers have more inherent love for the characters, i.e. Michel's position, where he's giving you kind of exposition on a character he's created. It's always interesting because it's like, even last year when people were saying, how would you have handled this? And he's like, I would follow this kind of route with like maybe potentially doing that. But he's like, I'd really have to sit down and think about it. Obviously with him, he's thinking from a visionary standpoint, and that's great to see as well. But imagine if he was doing that, but then Square or like a bigger publishers around him, they could be like, well, we don't like that. And it's like, we don't like that idea. And it's like, then he's trying to navigate that terrain. It's such a horrible industry at times to kind of see things and like work around. But I did like that he gave those responses. I love that he interacts with people, and it's always interesting to hear his perspective. And I think the Chloe inspirations are on point. I love that the fact that a character can change their color of hair and it kind of reflects in it. And she is that kind of character, because otherwise I think people are like, well, she's just angry all the time and she says something to Max. It's like, no, it's like, I think my kind of position with Chloe has always been really relatable through Ashley Birch and the essays she wrote as well, like, you know, about her personal experience, about her life and the way she connected with the character. I think that's the always thing that stood out with me in terms of Chloe. It's like, that's why she's more than just a hot-headed character or hot-tempered character. There's more to her and her relationship. She's a very complicated character, same as Max and same as Rachel, which I find all quite equally divisive, all quite interesting as well. But I thought it was an interesting observation from Michel, and it's a good way to kick off 2025. I'm sure we'll see more fireworks, not from Michel, but we'll see fireworks, I imagine, at some point this year. I don't think we're going to go without some controversy popping up in some way, shape, or form about Life is Strange or Square or something like that. I think something's going to happen.
Yeah, it's just kind of like at this point in time, I don't know where the Life is Strange franchise is going to go. I don't know because I don't want it to go away, because once again, I like Life is Strange. I would like it to keep going, but I don't know, man. Square Enix is just not handling the IP correctly, and they just need to hand it off, man. Square Enix wants to sell so many IPs, and yet they're just like clinging to this Life is Strange one. So it's selling. Like, that's the thing. Yeah. It's selling, because otherwise, why wouldn't they sell it off? It's because the Life is Strange IP is still making them money. That's why they want it. So obviously there's a value to it. It's just that they're not handling it well. Yeah. So it's kind of like you have a Porsche, but you're like constantly going through construction zones. You know, it's like, why are we doing this?
Do you know who else has a Porsche?
I don't know who has a Porsche.
Sophia.
What?
No, but you're right though, because Square knows they can make a low budget game and make a decent return, and that's why it's keeping brand awareness with the IP. And I've said that before. I've always wanted Life is Strange to continue, but I think if anything, Square needs to sit back at the table and be like, "What is Life is Strange?" That's the biggest question for anyone. And I've always said this before. It's like, when you talk about DNA and they keep doing the marketing, that really rattled me last year when they were doing it in the double exposure. It's like Life is Strange DNA. It's like, well, what is the DNA? This is early in the market. It's like, what is the DNA here? It's like, I don't know what you're trying to suggest, but it's like, I've always said that would be the interesting scenario you could have in any hypothetical scenario, where it's like, you're in a room with Michel and Raoul, you in Webb and Chris and Zach Harris, and also as well John Stauder. If you're in a room with all of them and you said to them, asking specifically, like, directed one question at all of them, it's like, what is Life is Strange's DNA? They would all give you different answers. And I think that's the interesting part about the conversation, because it's like, Square needs to sit back at the table and be like, what is Life is Strange's DNA? Is it the anthology model? Is it episodic releases? Is it a coming of age story? Is it actual murder mystery games? Because that seems to be the Deck 9 Square Enix mode, if anything at the moment. Is it a coming of age story? Is it about the characters? Is it about the music? Is it about, what is it? What is it, the DNA of it? It's like when people are saying Resident Evil is going back to Resident Evil's DNA. It's like, what? It's like, it's completely different. It's so different in the respect of it. You can't say it's going back to a DNA of root of it. It's going to a completely different direction. If anything, it's a new springboard for the entire franchise. Like, that's what they were doing. They were going a completely different direction for what Resident Evil actually is. It has shades of it, but it's not a DNA replication. So I think like there's an important point where I think more for me, it's like Square needs to sit back at the table and be like, actually, what is Life is Strange here? It's like, we had certain points in double exposure which we think were good, and it's like we could potentially go forward with that, but what are the other inherent issues with the game? And it's like, that's where you kind of go forward with it. And it's like, that's why I think the Chloe Price thing, when you see like Michel's takes there as well, I think it still lingers in people, because it's it's like you're giving exposition to a character which was basically diluted in the game, which was like even told off screen, which was even for me the biggest one. It's insulting because it's like that character needs more screen time to kind of actually tell stories. But as you will, as double exposure will be something we revisit, and it's something that we need to talk about. But I think like it'll be in a different course because I think we've said our piece in a long review as it did, and I think a lot of things turned out have aged like fine wine so far as well.
Yes.
I've gone back and watched some of our old video, Adam as well, like some of the older StrangeCast videos. We've aged. And it's like,
really,
yeah. And but I went back and watched the review episode. And you can see with my beard, I was like, really, really roughly. I think one of the lines was like, "Get John Stauder," and the deck 90 out there. And I was like, well, that happened, didn't it? I was like, that turned out to be like a good prediction.
Did you say that?
Yeah, I said it.
Did you say John? Yeah. Did you? I don't remember you saying that.
There's an early episode where I was like, to fix this, I was like, get rid of the entire double exposure team and replace them with the Expanse. That was in another episode. And the other one, I was like, you need to get that creative team off the double exposure and get them out of it. I didn't say get out of the studio. I didn't say fire. I'm compassionate.
Yeah.
But I was like, get them off this game. And it's like, the entire creative team has just been axed. And I'm like, that's brutal from me. But I was like, I actually probably called that if anything. So I was like, well,
the one thing that has aged like milk, or aged like wine, not milk, the Arcade Bay collection. We're still waiting for our residuals, is what I'm saying.
That's the Philly cheese steaks. That's what we need.
Philly cheese steaks, baby.
That's what we need.
Because like that's the thing, man. It's like we kept saying like just call the Arcade Bay collection. Just call it. Switch comes out, the Arcade Bay collection. It's like, I don't know, man. That's a little weird. It's just a little weird. Like we got the receipts and everything. You can go back to the old episodes, and then you can see when the Arcade Bay collection was released. Just saying, it's a little weird.
Yeah.
Putting it out there.
There are also things in those episodes that have aged terribly, i.e. us laughing at Aperture rumors, but that was fair in my respect. I was like, this is...
Yeah, because once again, I stand by those laughings. And then when the game came out, it's a laughing stock. So it's like we were reading the leaks, and it's like, this game is ridiculous. Why would they put it out? The game comes out, and it's ridiculous. So, no, it aged like wine. Because as we were laughing at it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah. So the part about the laughing as well, because it's like, it was because of how radical the direction changed. It was like, it wasn't accepting certain parts of that room. It was too not believable, like in certain respects that are happening. I was like, no, this is way too pivot changing compared to where we're at so far. But apparently the pivot happened in a big way, and it's like the franchise turned the way that it did. And I should have seen other things, including Hannah being in Colorado, but like that never actually happened. But like in terms of like seeing it actually putting the dots together. But I was like so convinced. I was like, no, surely not, because this is so radical, the pivot. And it's like, no, it's like this is what happens. I was like, damn. But yeah, in itself as well, it's always difficult because when you put yourself out there, sometimes you'll get something like bullseye and you'll be like, oh yes, I nailed that prediction. Otherwise, it's like you put things out there and it's like, oh, and it's like there's a prediction to 2030 episode, which I'm going to go back and watch at some point for a topic for us to revisit. And I'm like, oh boy, I don't want to see what happens here, because it's like some things are probably going to age really, really badly. And it's like, oh boy. But yeah, I think we'll move off from our topic there, if anything. But it was interesting to hear Michel's perspective as always as well. And if anything, Adam as well, we only have that one piece of news because we are again at the beginning of the year. So this is a bit more of a chilled episode as it is. But we have got an interesting main topic because we are officially in January, and later this month, episode 1, Chrysalis, released 10 years ago. This month, which is crazy. So we are officially at the Life is Strange 1 mark of a milestone for the franchise for the first game alone as well, especially if anything. But I thought we'd pitch this to Adam, and I know Adam loves these things as well for our listeners as well. So it's actually a little bit of a video format, and Adam's face dropped when he saw it as soon as we started, because Adam loves a ranking system video.
I hate ranking things.
Loves them. Ignore him. He loves them.
Yeah.
So in itself, I thought StrangeCast can revisit the first Life is Strange game, and we are going to rank the 5 episodes of Life is Strange 1 as part of our discussion. So we've actually put a graphic out recently on our Twitter pages and stuff, and a lot of people interact with it, engaged with it, which is amazing to see, and also on our other social pages. But I thought, where do Adam and Adnan stand on the 5 episodes? So as you can see, our scale is here on Tier Maker. So you have The goat, which is one episode. Goat is singular. I hate when people do goats as 2 or 3 things. There is only one goat, greatest of all time. Adam, don't laugh. It really irks me. It's like, it's greatest of all time. There's singular. You can't put 4 episodes in there. It makes no sense. So there is goat, there is excellent, there is great, there is strong, and there is good. So this is not clickbaiting. This is not some kind of like controversy, reactionary like thumbnail video. It is simply as pure as it gets, because I thought we would rank them, and each episode has to go into a certain slot, and we both have to agree on a set episode going in there. So I'm going to pull that down for the time being. We'll keep coming back to it. But that is our ranking list there, and we're going to rank the 5 episodes of Life is Strange, depending on different criteria, and we'll probably discuss them in between it. So, Adam, I will give you the floor here. Where do you want to go first? Which episode would you like to pick out?
So first and foremost, well, let's leave the tier system up so that we can drag and drop and people can see it. But while we were doing it, I was just saying, like, because Games and Groceries, we did a Life is Strange episodes ranked, and I hated doing that episode so much. It's our highest ranking. It's our highest ranking video on Games and Groceries, and it's sits at 2.2 thousand watch. So that's great. It's just like, it's like nobody watched the podcast, but they all watched that one. I'm just like, okay, great. Yeah, hated doing that ranking. So we're starting with episode 1.
You can choose whichever episode. I'm giving you freedom here to pick whichever episode you'd like to go with first. You can go with the first one. You can go with the 5th one, 4, 3, 2, whichever one you want.
I'm gonna start with episode 1, and episode 1. I'm gonna say, you know what? I'm gonna say, because I want to say it's strong, but I'm gonna say it's great. I'm gonna put it right in the middle. That's my vote. I'm gonna say let's put it in the middle of great.
So each episode has to go into one slot. They can't be more than one in each row. We're singling it out there. So it's like It will go from 1 to top. The first episode, Chrysalis, is a very strong introduction to the game. I think it's fairly well paced. It sets up the mystique well. I think it's one of the really memorable episodic games that starts off. And in a list of very good episodes, because again, this list is done in a very specific way where I don't think any of the episodes are bad. I think they're all good, great, etc. Episode 1, I would say, I change every year, every like week, month on these rankings, but I think this is the one which is like a little bit, it's great and strong for me, but it's like I would pivot towards great, if anything, at the moment. In some other days I would pivot to strong, because I think there's another episode which could jump into the great tier. But I think in general speaking sense, the first episode is wonderful looking back on it. There's so many good moments in it. It sets up the mystique, the intrigue. I think if you've never played Life is Strange or knew anything about it, I think by the time you enter the first episode, it's like that classic TV episode which gets you invested in the season. You're like, okay, I'm now excited to watch this. Think about all those TV shows you catch up on. It's like someone's recommended it to you, watch the first episode. It's like, I can't believe I missed this. And it's like, now I can catch up on all those episodes. And that's what it feels like with Life is Strange, where someone gets introduced to the series and it's like, like hot damn, it's like we're in full gear. Yeah, I think you're right. I think maybe great would be the tier for it.
Yeah, because it's a good introduction, and it starts the game off strong. But in terms of like first chapters of any game, I think it's one of the greatest. So that's why I'm going to say let's drag it up to great.
Before we do as well, I just wanted to ask you something, just to put a little negative Nancy twist on this episode as always. What didn't you like about the first episode?
It started... So it took me 3 times to really get into Life is Strange.
Really?
Yeah, it did not hook me right away because I feel like it has the same troubles as fantasy novels, where if you start with a fantasy novel, it almost starts with like as if you already live in this world, and they start you off with like lore and locations and names of people that you're just like, wait. We're setting up a whole new universe here. So when the game starts off in a tornado, it's a nightmare. Then you go back into a high school, and and you're just like, oh, wandering around, and then you're walking up a hallway. It didn't start strong for me, but that's because I'm a troglodyte. So don't take that for like my artistic views. But like, yeah, when it first started, I was just like, I don't know what's happening here. I don't get it. And then it took me a second try. I was like, all right, whatever. But the third try, yeah, I was definitely digging it.
Okay, no, it's interesting. I just wanted to know what you thought about it, because I think that I think the pacing is maybe in the middle part of the episode, it slows down a little bit. And it's like, I think it's because you're spending time with Chloe and Max, because it's like you're in the house and you're trying to do the little bits and bots. So you just kind of like start stepping stones in terms of Max and Chloe's relationship, in terms of putting like a dangling carrot over your face about maybe Dave Madsen being like a red herring, etc. It slows down slightly in certain points, but I think that's like just as you will as an episode. It needs to be an introduction. And I think that the general pacing of the episode is very good. Obviously, the ending montage is great with that. But I think it's a very strong introduction as well. Would you say, before we move on from this episode, it's the best opening episode you've played for any episodic game?
For any episodic game?
Any.
Oh, man, I'm going to get in trouble for this one. No.
So obviously we're bringing those Telltale games and all those other stuff.
Walking Dead Season 1, baby.
It was class. Oh.
That's a good opening episode, man. That's one I'll remember forever, dude. Because like you're in the back of a cop car and everything goes to hell, and it's just, I need to replay those games, man.
It's so good, man.
Yeah,
I played that first season so many times. The Walking Dead is so good.
To be honest with you,
in so many ways.
My New Year's resolution for gaming, I want to replay games like all this year, just replay. Like I just want to replay games. Of course I'm going to be playing Lost Records and Avowed, of course, but there's so many times that I'm just like Life is Strange. I know I played it pretty recently, but
I tell you what, I'll cut you off from that because we'll come back to it in a different. It was actually a separate standalone video I was going to do at some point. So I'll go for your New Year's resolution games in another video, but I'm obviously very interested to hear them. So let's allocate Life is Strange 1, which I think we're just using this because it didn't have a key art as the other one. So it's going to great, yeah?
Yeah, great.
So we're going to put that in there. So I think that. So I'm going to just quickly close that. So we are now 4 episodes left. Remainder. Do you want to pick the next one, or do you want me to pick it?
Are we not leaving up the thing?
Well, I'll keep jumping back in and out, so obviously people see the bigger versions of us whilst we're talking. But I'll go back onto it. But do you want to pick the next episode? Or do you want me to pick it?
Picking. We're not going in order.
No, it can be any order.
Okay. Well, you want to start with the easy bucket here,
which is hard.
Episode 4 being in GOAT. Episode 4 is in GOAT. Episode 4 is in GOAT. You can stop it. That's a layup right there. That's a layup, dude. Tell me any other twist in the game that still haunts you to this day. You know, there's only a handful of video game twists, okay? There's plenty of novel twists. There's plenty of movie twists. But in terms of video game twists and how it properly sets it up and the gameplay leads up to it, like you're nervous playing it, right? That's a whole different level of twist, right? We have the Aerith twist, right? We have the Life is Strange twist. We have the Metal Gears twists, plural. There are only a handful of video game twists that set it up properly, and we're gonna talk about how the twist in episode 4 is the one of a legendary twist in a video game in history of video games.
Yeah,
because nobody saw it coming. It was a red herring, and nobody saw that coming. And even now, it holds up. Like you replay Life is Strange, and you still don't see it.
And you know the weird thing is as well, it seems like the most obvious pick as well. Like I was watching back the game, every time I play back the first Life is Strange, I'm like thinking, it's so obvious that Jefferson is like the man who has done all
It's
this.
well
It feels
hidden.
like, yeah, but it's so discreetly hidden in the game. I'm like, oh my god,
because like even you replay it and you know it's coming, and you're like, they set this up so beautifully that it's in plain sight, but you still don't see it coming. You know,
yeah.
and it sets it up in a way of like, there's twists where you really have to sell it to the audience, like, oh, this is how he did it. It's like, it's a bit of a stretch, but that's one of those twists where it's hidden plain sight, but it still leads to one of the greatest.
See, it's a toss up between this and another episode, which we'll come on to. But I think let's go into episode 4, because it's like, to set up where it goes off the third episode, and then you set up in the past to start with, and obviously a big decision where it's like you have that Chloe Max relationship. It's kind of like an early precursor to the ending, where it's like, will you kill Chloe at this point because she asked you to, or will you like keep her alive because of your own reasons? And it's like, it feels like it's almost foreshadowing what happens at the end of the game, where you make the ultimate choice, because even Chloe's like, make the choice. It's like I need to die, and then it's like, will you let her die at this point? It's like it's coming to your decision on that. So that's great. I think in itself as well, the pace and the momentum gets really kicked into high gear in terms of figuring out what's happening in the story, in terms of Rachel Amber's disappearance, in terms of the dark room. I love the entire board sequence where you start putting together what's happened, and it's like we're now connecting the dots. The Vortex Club party is out of this. It's like withstood the test of time, and even the music as well of it. And then obviously the twist at the ending. Yeah, episode 4 Darkroom. Yeah, maybe because of what happened with the episode 4 Darkroom, it probably like tempered my expectation with the
it crescendos into the story too. Like it leads up so nicely, because again, when there's a twist in a novel, which by the way, I just read through Never Lie by Frida McFadden.
Nice.
Oh my god, such a good twist, dude. It Never Lie by Frida McFadden. But again, in novels, I don't want to say it's fairly easy to make a twist, because it's not. Because I've also read Off the Deep End, I believe it's called. Sucked. So I'm not saying it's easy. But I am saying it's easier because it's a linear pace, right? You're kind of fishing them into the twist. Even in movies, you're kind of fishing them in. But it's also the gameplay involved in a video game twist. Like you have to set up the player as they're invested into the world, as they're controlling their choices, as they're controlling what happens in your own world. You also have that in mind, and they have to figure things out in their own perspective, their own gameplay. For it to lead up to that way in a video game is going to be studied in colleges. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, because I think one of my favorite experiences now as well, having played the game for as long as we have, and is when you introduce someone to it and they play for the game. So when I've introduced one of my friends to it and he was playing it, I remember like when I was like, I can't remember what I was doing. It was just like just a general day. And next minute, the message just comes up on my phone where it says Jefferson. It's like episode 4.
I'm telling you.
It's like it's going to happen, and it's like this episode always tears me a little bit with another episode where I think like it could be the strongest. But I think if anything, one of the things with episode 4 Darkroom, which I think is the standout in terms of when I said to you before, like, is the first episode the best introduction you've ever played in any episodic game. I think episode 4 Darkroom is the best penultimate episode in any video game ever. Even The Walking Dead as well. I don't think The Walking Dead hits anywhere near the same candle as this game, because this has everything. It's like everything is like, it feels like we are going to the finish line and we are going full guns blazing, and you're going to drop your jaw by the end of this, because everything starts to like ravel together. All the dots are starting to connect together, and it's like, because of what Jefferson represents, and I think the message he sends in terms of being a teacher, manipulation, all those other kind of things that happen in between it, and even with Max as well. I think like it's so harrowing as well, just to see what happens there as well. And I think like when you finish that as well, and Chloe is dead at that point as well, like where he shoots her dad, it's like, it's so like, oh my god, I can't believe they just killed her off. It's like that is like ballsy in such a way where most video games wouldn't go down that route. I think it does have to go in the goat. So, it's like,
I'm gonna guess that you were gonna put episode 5 in goats.
Really?
Yeah, because Chaos Theory I think is excellent. Like I think I'm gonna say Chaos Theory. You were gonna put Chaos Theory in goat. Are you insane?
Really? You don't?
No, it's not. Like it's a good peak in the story, but if we're talking the GOAT and what it all leads up to, and how the story just progresses to this point, you can't compare Chaos Theory to the way it sets up, which is why I'm just say it's like the GOAT has to be the crescendo of the story, which is episode 4. Like it has to be that.
Which is fair, I think, if anything. It would be a toss. There's always a toss-up between me deciding which the GOAT of this episode series is. And it's two of the ones that I think episode 4 is usually the one that pops up in my mind. Because it's like, I don't see many flaws in this episode. I don't. I think it's like, I think I gave it 4.5 when I reviewed it out of 5. I think
Are you talking about Chaos Theory or episode 4?
Episode 4.
Yeah.
I genuinely gave it 4.5 out of 5. If I went back and re-reviewed, I'd give it 5 now. In hindsight, I'd be like, actually, I was probably critical of certain other things with it. I think like it was like the technical limitations, etc. But I think like as a story, it's like it really just it's now that kind of like storytelling which you want to see in a game, especially like, you know, if I'm comparing recent games like Double Exposure, it feels like the setup is officially that, and by the time I get to the last chapter, I'm like, oh boy, it's like all hands on deck, everything is set up. Now you just need to land this game. That's the main thing,
and it did. And we'll talk about that, but no, I'm gonna say that like the twists are good when you have to slam down whatever you're holding and say what, like again, like Never Lie by Freddie McFadden. I slammed the book. I was like, are you kidding me? And I picked it back up, and I was like, oh my god, dude. And then with episode 4, it's like, what? Yeah, watching the movie Searching. I threw a pillow at the wall when I watched Searching. I was like, are you kidding me? And I just like threw the pillow at the wall. And like, that's the kind of twist where you're just like, you're excited. Whereas like, there's twists that happen that it's just like, oh my God. You know what I mean? Like, you're just like, oh, interesting. But when you have to throw a pillow at a wall, that's a good twist.
Yeah, when I went back and played it, I remember the first time playing it, I was reviewing it as well and getting the early access, because I just remember thinking, I was like, you've really effectively delivered what I think is a really difficult point in the episode game. I think in itself as well, I think 1, 3, 4 are the more difficult chapters in a 5-episode structure. I think in itself, if episode 5 fails, it fails, because like if the story doesn't land, it doesn't land, whatever, you know. And that's both good and bad. But I think you need to keep up the stepping stones, where 1 is the opening chapter, it hooks people. 3 really builds the foundation in the center of it. And then 4 is the penultimate, where you're like, actually, goddamn, we've got everything set up for a 5th. If it lands, it doesn't land. If it does, it does. Obviously, you want the game to land. But I'm saying in terms of keeping people hooked, because if episode 5 fails, at least people have played the first 4 episodes and think, actually, you know, I went on the journey and they just failed at the last moment. And it's like, you know, they're still going to play the game, if anything. But it's like, those are some of the key moments in it. And I think when you get to episode 4, and it's like the mystique of the Vortex Party, and it's like all these little dots start happening, and you start putting them together, I'm like, oh. And it feels like the story just continues. It feels like the setting up of like any great season I've watched of TV, where it's like that last chapter that sets up to them thing, and it's like, oh, actually we're heading towards that, which is what I'm hoping Silo does very soon, because we're nearly at the end of the season. I'm very sad that's going to end. Okay, I agree with you. Then we'll put episode 4 at GOAT status. I think it deserves that recognition. They're all great episodes in their own right, but I think that deserves that.
Can I put up the other layup here,
which is
episode 2 being good?
I was literally just about to move to episode 2.
I'm putting it at good.
We're very divided on this app. Like I don't know if we have the consensus opinion on this, because we've both related on this episode at different points, which I think this episode is really interesting in terms of the setup, which happens in the first episode, because I think it has some really beautiful moments, like, you know, the junkyard sequence where Chloe and Max are bonding, even the railway sequence, which is
that's what I mean.
Max and Chloe, it's got good character development. It needs good character development, and I think you get a lot of time with Max and Chloe. They create some really great moments. You see really, like, you know, iconic moments now, I'd say, in terms of the series, which have stuck with people. And I just think, if anything else as well, what happens in the first episode, which is a good introduction, and then it feels like during the burner turns up a little bit in heat, and then it feels like it cools down this episode a little bit. which I think is respectable as well. I think it's fine because you do need to establish Max and Chloe coming back together at this point, because in the first episode they've kind of just bumped into each other in terms of it's like
And
we
the
bumped into each other. Yeah, and then the bottle. Oh God, the nightmares of the bottles, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like it's good, and I think in itself, I think the strongest point of this episode for me was the ending, because
Was
that's
the building, yeah, definitely.
yeah. And I think like it's just because a lot of things are happening in the episode in terms of Kate Marsh comes really central into the story of the game. But then at the same time, in the central part of the story, Chloe and Max's relationship is building. And it's like, I feel like there's quite a lot going on here where maybe it could have like spread, like maybe some of that part of that story could have moved into episode 1 potentially. But I think it's not as well paced as the other episodes. I think it's not as strong as the other episodes. And
so why are we divided here, you said?
No, sorry. I meant maybe we're divided from other people in like.
Oh, I was about to say, like, where are you going to put this thing?
No. I think we've kind of come to a consensus before in the past when we talked about things where I think like we've felt very similar with Life is Strange. Episode 2 out of time. I think we've both been quite on the same wavelength, if anything. But I think like other people have like really rated this episode higher. I think like in itself, it's great moments to think about it now in terms of Daya had a really great moment with this, and then with the development team, they were able to include that episode where, the chapter where you go and see Kate in the hospital bed, which was a nice touch because of the fan feedback. These were, this is what, when we were talking before, I said like Square Enix goes back to the drawing table and like thinks about what Life is Strange DNA is. It was a different time, it was a different period, I know that. But with episodic gaming, these were the kind of magic moments they had with like Don't being able to create these kind of things where it's like, actually we'll twist this quickly in development and put like, maybe a bit more Kate Marsh because people liked it. Yeah, it was sincere with this. I think this was a really good episode, if anything. Obviously, I do need to remind the audience here that when Adam played it, Kate jumped off the roof because that was Adam's experience of episode 2 out of time. But no, I think it's still. I think all of them are strong. I think this is potentially the more weaker episode out of that.
Because I was going to say that with the remaining episodes, are you going to put this one in place of excellent and strong? Like it's in the good category.
Yeah, it's got to go into good. I think that's probably the more respectable. It's still a very good episode. But I think it's just there are limitations with that episode. What's told in terms of the story, it feels like we really slow down and we tell a really great relationship with Max and Chloe, and then we kind of like start, feeding in a little bit of the narrative in terms of what's happening with Kate at Arcadia Bay and also at Blackwell. And then obviously it goes like, it goes full 1 to 100 with a good setup at the end of the episode. But I think like, it's just, it in itself, I think this is a reminder that that's also good, that you just need to stop and slow the story. Maybe an episode does need to sacrifice the same incredible quality that others have because it has to tell part of the foundation of the story, because this sets up really well for episode 3, which we'll come into. If anything, Adam, we have 2 episodes remaining here. Episode 3, Chaos Theory. Episode 5, Polarized. Where do we go from here?
Well, I'm doing this. Episode 3 goes in excellent, and episode 5 goes in strong.
Yeah, see, like episode 5 always really is polarizing. It's very polarizing for me because it's like it's the one episode which really didn't hit its time frame window. I remember Michel saying like each episode tried to hit an 8-week window, and it really did. Episode 5 got pushed back a little bit, and when I played that, I still thought it was a very good episode.
Yes,
but
yeah,
did it hold the same candle as episode 3 and 4 in quality? I don't think so. It's very like the opening of the dark room is is incredible. Like it's frustrating to play that because it's like, hang on a minute, what are we doing here? It's like, when do we get
David the table on it, Sarge?
Do you know what? That's the one time he deserves to get shot.
Yeah,
at that point. And then when I love the moment where it's like when Judy snitch on Jefferson, he like grabs the tripod and tries to hit.
Yeah,
it's like some of the acting.
How did you know? It's just like. That whole puzzle was just like, oh my god, I know the answer. Can I just get to the answer already?
Yeah. some of the acting is wonderful at that moment. It's so good at this. Yeah. It's aged so well. But I think it's great in terms of telling like doing the psychology with like Max in terms of like all the nightmares, all the stuff that's leading up to it. We wrap things up, but it feels very it doesn't feel like it's as long as the other ones. And I think it needed a bit more time in certain places just to kind of flesh out 1 or 2 other points. maybe that's me being picky, but it's not as strong with it. And obviously the big ending, which I think is probably. Do you think it's the best ending for any episodic game?
No, it's not the best ending of any. Like, I'm talking about like, man, I really like the way Wolf Among Us ended. I really like that one.
Literally thinking the exact same. That ending is so, and we are
so
still
good.
waiting for the Wolf Among Us 2, man.
Yeah,
we're still waiting for the Wolf Among Us 2, but I remember watching that ending and the Wolf Among. That's one of my favorite episodic games now. Like I've recently played that. Like I think like in the last 2 years, I was like, oh, Bigby is such a great character. And then when I remember that ending happening, I was like, this is peak Telltale. I was like, this is peak Telltale. I was like, oh my God. I was like, yeah, it's up there for me. I think like maybe it depends on which ending you think. I think like in terms of choice, it's like, goddamn, I think like it's got the biggest impact in choice. And I think like it's really interesting to hear like how they developed the last two scenarios. Because we got on different routes as well. I've usually always used to go with Chloe being the ending. It's like you went with the town as well. But I think like the different juxtaposition you get in terms of choice. But I think that's why, obviously, as we saw in 2024, it's so hard to make a sequel without like parameters and working with things, because you basically give ultimate agency back to your player to make the decision. But yeah, episode 5. But come on, man! Like, you know, episode 5 is Michel Koch in it. Like, you know, maybe that has to put.
Yeah, but if we're talking about like what we're putting in a number 2 slot, Chaos Theory, man, like it's the peak of the story. It's what makes the relationship last. It's what makes episode 4 even more powerful to like how much Max cares about Chloe. Episode 3 sets up so much that I can't put it in strong. I have to put it in excellent, you know?
Yeah, that's because like for me, the GOAT does flip between 3 and 4. I think 4 is very good. I think 4 is a very good episode, and it usually is my GOAT. But I think sometimes back on 3, I'm like, what you're doing here and all the setups, and then even the ending as well. The ending of episode 3 is as jaw-dropping as the 4th one. Maybe not as jaw-dropping when in hindsight now when we look at it, because it's like, god damn, it's like didn't expect that to happen. But it was a jaw-dropping moment, and I think like it has all those great moments because it moves the story so well. We're moving constantly in episode 3, and I love the fact that we start expanding not only just Max's story but her powers, because obviously we start seeing Max jump into Polaroid. You know, we go back in time, we have limitations around her powers there, but like, you know, she starts like doing things where it's like we start going to full effects of what Chaos Fury is and can be as well. And I think that is the stronger one, because like when you compare episode 3 and 5, I think it's clear which is the stronger episode, if anything. Because I think episode 5 lands, and that's a testament to Life is Strange, but it's just, it needed to be a little bit longer for me. There was just certain, I wanted to be a bit more longer. I know everything's hitting the fan at that point, but I think there was more moments to explore in the story there. What those are, that's constantly changing in my head, if anything. But that third episode is man, those two are back to back, man. Episode 3 and 4 in any episodic game, I don't think anything compares to it, personally speaking. I really don't. Maybe The Walking Dead season 1 is a very good kind of like challenge to it, but I think not even that hits the same, you know, testament what these two episodes do. They're just unbelievable. So yeah, should we put the episode 3, in its place there?
Yeah, definitely.
Which I think that will be our ranking, which is GOAT will be episode 4. Dark Room, episode 3 is excellent. Episode 1 is great. Episode 5 is strong, and episode 2 is good, which I think is for us the 5 rankings of the Life is Strange episodes. Just a quick one as well. Potentially 3 and 4, do you think they could swap around in your head?
Yeah, I mean they definitely could, just because like they lead up, they are the yin and yang of each other. They are the both of the setup of one another. So like episode 4 wouldn't be strong without episode 3, you know, and vice versa. But like it is like they are a duality, 3 and 4.
Yeah, I think in itself, those two will always take the top for me. I think that there's a clear position where it's either or. 4 or 3 is the top one, and it's the same with the second one. I think like they're the distinctive ones. For me, episode 1 has to stay at 3 because I feel like it's strong enough. It's a very good introduction. I feel like it's great. It needs to stay in that because I think it's very. a poignant opener and a very constructive story from start to finish. And then even in itself as well, like 1, 2, actually 1, 5, and 3. Sorry, 1, 5, 3, 1, 5, 2. I think you could constantly alternate depending on how you feel. I would personally say that I think it's between episode 2 and 5 you could change. But I think that's my personal rankings with it. I still like the second episode. I think it's very good, but I think that for me is my strongest run. If I was going from top to bottom and agreeing with you with this, I think that those are the picks.
Okay. Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, that's StrangeCast's tier list maker for the 5 episodes of The First Life is Strange. Let us know what you think in the comments. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think Adam's just being Adam? Let us know.
Yeah.
You want us to rank anything else? Let us know. Maybe there's characters we can rank. I would like to rank the Life is Strange one characters. There's some brilliant ones in there, to be honest. Maybe that's the next episode. Maybe. But yeah, let us know what you think as well. I think that's fair in itself as well. That tier maker is not controversial because I know why you don't like doing lists and why you don't like doing them, because they kind of be like, but I think that's fair because like we didn't like drive people to be like, well, you need to watch the end to pick out the GOAT. It feels like it's a fair assessment to make. And I think ranking those is based on how good they are, because I think that's the testament to the game 10 years later. I think that's why it's so good, because it's like none of them are really bad in my eyes in any way, shape or form. There's criticism in between things, and maybe there's like 1 or 2 things where you could change them, but I think like generally speaking, like the 5 episodes are strong from start to finish, like all collectively.
Okay. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, perfect. So let's move into our comment of the day. Yeah,
let's do it.
Or comment of the podcast. So we're going for comment of the podcast off our last episode. So this is thank you to Yoki466. And they said, Life is Strange Double Exposure being nominated for Best Narrative at the 2025 BAFTA Game Awards will be the same as a J.J. Abrams movie being nominated. Adam has just highlighted J.J. Abrams.
Because I was about to say, they're attacking your boy here, man.
If you thought the narrative was good, clearly you weren't paying attention. I mean, good for you if you like the narrative, I guess, but you have no business judging something based on Best Narrative. Ouch, 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 ouch.
Yeah.
J.J. Abrams is a bit of a... I could see it in parts. He's done some...
But they're attacking your boy here, man. Like, yeah, he did the Star Wars...
My boy?
What's that?
When's he be my boy?
Oh, what's your favorite show of all time, dude?
Yeah, he didn't all of it, but that is that's seminal from J.J. Abrams. I will say that no one will ever attack that. That is like where he was in his like peak advancy, so I'm not having anything against him there. He has had some really interesting things though, like obviously like Star Wars, for example. That was like where it's like I kind of get where that narrative comment comes on. I've made it before about Abrams as well. Yeah, that nomination we'll be covering that, don't worry, because obviously the long list will be reduced in the coming months. I think it's March when it's revealed, and then April will be the ceremony. If it is nominated.
I didn't realize J.J. Abrams wrote Mission Impossible 3.
Yeah. Did he direct it as well?
I'm not seeing the directorial credits. I'm just on like what he wrote. I'm just like seeing he created Fringe. I forgot about Fringe.
Man, he's been J.J. Abrams is like that guy. He's literally just there. He's everywhere. He is the person there. He's always
sorry, man. Like that's a hot take to say J.J. Abrams is at the same rank as Double Exposure. Like that's a hot take, dude.
My favorite.
You can say Michael Bay, but like it's a hot take.
My favorite part of any pop culture conversation about J.J. Abrams has always been the South Park episode when they rewrite the national anthem and they get J.J. Abrams to do it. And I'm like, oh my god, the perfect reference there. It's honestly that BAFTA long list is baffling for me. Like it should be nominated for lead performer for Hannah Tell, and it should be nominated for Games Beyond, which is the bog standard Life is Strange.
Also he did the screenplay for Armageddon. J.J. Abrams.
There you go.
I'm sorry, hot take to say that J.J. Abrams is not a good like narrative director. That's a hot take, dude.
Well, he's kind of like hit and miss though. He reminds me of M. Night Shyamalan or Shyamalama Ding Dong, according to Tarantino. It's like even Shyamalan's been criticized, but his recent works have kind of been a bit on a return to form for me, if anything.
Yeah, but like that's the thing. I think we're on a recency basis on J.J. Abrams. Like, oh, the Star Wars movie sucked. But I just said Mission Impossible 3, which was one of the stronger Mission Impossibles. Alias. He did Alias. He did, as we said, Lost. He did. He was a direct in the screenplay for Armageddon. He did Super 8. Super 8 was good. I liked Super 8. It was fine. Yeah. But yeah, no, like that hot take to say J.J. Abrams. That's a hot take, dude.
Yeah, he isn't as bad. I think maybe it is the recent.
Yeah, I think people will with him. Again, Michael Bay is the Nickelback of movie producers. Like, let's put it that way. Like,
that's right.
For J.J. Abrams, it's like a solid performer. I would say J.J. Abrams is the Metallica. You know, like there's some like good bangers there, but it's like it's also overplayed. I would say J.J. Abrams is.
He also feels like a Metallica song as well. His stories where it takes like 4 minutes to get into the introduction. the introduction of "And Sandman" continues to play. It's like, are we getting into the song yet? But
that's J.J. Abrams right there.
I love Metallica for that. But yeah, he is a very interesting character. Like his body of work does that though. I think it's like Spielberg, for example. Like my brother like loves Spielberg, but like if you talk to him about modern Spielberg, he hates him so much. He was like, he's giving me the biggest takedown piece I've ever heard of The Fablesman, and it's like he just absolutely loathed it in every way. And I think maybe it's just they've changed their style a bit too much in what is now the modern audience. I think maybe that is the same with Abrams, because it's like Force Awakens. I remember watching, I was like, well, this feels like a rehash of what George Lucas did with the fourth Star Wars. It's like it's too safe, this, and it's the same kind of thing where I've said it before, where I said like, that has aged well, at least in the podcast, where I said like True Colors felt like a Force Awakens moment for the series, and it's like, was it like a bit of a soft reboot thing? Maybe like Double Exposure felt like a bit more, if not horrifically bad for it. But yeah, it's a weird one, because like Double Exposure should not be nominated for Best Narrative. Like if Deck Nine has wielded, that's one of my biggest defenses now as well, which is kind of proven well. It's like, if the narrative was that good, why would Deck Nine just axe its entire creative lead team on the Life is Strange game? It tells you that unfortunately it's not been that. And I had like a million different questions. You see it with all the writers. It was like this writer saying that, and that writer saying this, and that writer saying that, and it's like too many hands in the cookie jar, man. Too many hands in the cookie jar. It's like you can have multiple people collaborating and things, but it needs to be coherent, and that wasn't coherent. We will revisit that game, I'm sure, at some point, but I think like it's going to be to see other things, I think, because there are certain things that are good with that game. I think there are certain things, and there are very few in between. I think they're overshadowed completely by what happens. But yeah, the JJ Abrams, I laughed when I saw that call. I was like, oof. But yeah, thank you for the comment, if anything. And we will wrap up here towards the end, which will obviously be Spread the Art. Adam, where do we go from here? Spread the Art. Do you want to go first?
I'll go, because I mentioned it, and I was like, you know what? I'll reroute my answer. I mentioned in this episode "Never Lie" by Frida McFadden. I got this book because Book Talk got to me, and they said like, "Oh, the twist is so good. Oh, I didn't see the twist coming." As someone who suffers from ADHD, one ADHD symptom is that like you can see the twist coming. Like we all can see it coming, and we ruin it. It's like, oh, it's this. I didn't see it coming. Like no. I actually, and like even Liz read it before, and she's like, "Oh my god, I didn't see that coming." I was like, "Okay." I didn't see it coming. Like this book, Never Lie by Frida McFadden, is an excellent example of how novels can set up twists better than movies and art, because like it subverts expectations, because they're using your senses against you. So man, this was just a good read. It's a short read. It took me about 4 hours to read. It's I again, Book Talk, it recommended it, and I was like, all right, let's do this. Man, what a good book, dude. So I'm gonna say that if you want like a good thriller novel, and the whole base is that a couple is going to look at a house, they get trapped in the house because of a snowstorm, and it actually belonged to a psychologist that has gone missing and has been seen as dead. We've not seen her body, but we're trying to find out like who murdered her. So and you find clues within the house. So Never Lie by Frida McFadden. I've heard some bad things about Frida though, like some bad novels, like the Inmate. I heard is bad. I don't know. This is my first Frida McFadden, so I've been spoiled.
Yeah, it's funny when you mentioned the ADHD thing because
Yeah,
that happens to me as well.
yeah. You can just see the twist coming because your brain operates in 20 different tasks.
But also not sometimes as well, because obviously, like, Life is Strange never happened with a twist.
Yeah.
But the one that really happened for me, I remember it was just really surreal. I was sitting in the cinema watching the IMAX version of The Dark Knight Rises.
Yes.
And when Alfred is on the stairs talking to Bruce, and he's like, I imagine seeing you in a cafe one day, and you'd be with you. And I was like, that's the fucking ending.
The twist. Yeah.
I was like, there it is. And I was like, I knew it. It's like, when it happened, I was like, yeah. But other times, I have this kind of thing where it's like, because you're overthinking it, it's like, oh, and it's like,
because I overthought this book because I'm like, oh, there's a twist, blah blah blah. But then my wife read it, and she's like, oh, I didn't see that coming. I was like, I bet I can see it coming.
Yeah.
Nope, it was good, dude. It's a good book, man. So, yeah, if you're in January and you're just like, oh, I want to read more books, if that's one of your resolutions, this is a good book to start with, I would say.
Yeah, I've had that recently with some of the M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong films, where it's like recently the twisters, obviously because it's his trademark twist thing, where it's like everyone sees it coming, but then one or two of the films it's caught me out, and I'm like, actually, that was really a lot more smarter and better executed, if anything. But no, yeah, it's a pretty good recommendation, that as well. So a good way to kick off 2025. For me, I finished off 2024 watching The Substance, which... Yeah, that's an interesting film, that. And I'm also glad that films like that are still made as well, because it's like you need those artsy-fartsy films as well, because I think they send a lot of messages as well.
Demi Moore,
who's very good as well. Like, full credit to her, as well as Margot Qualley as well, who I know from Death Stranding fame in terms of playing Mama, and then also as well in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, who's in that. But this is my kind of more exposure to her as like a full leading actor or supporting actor, whichever you want to call it. So the Substance was an interesting film to watch, that because I like horror films. I love horror films, and Hellraiser is one of my favorite horror films of all time. But I don't really do well with body horror, and I do well with it in terms of Hellraiser, where it's like one or two, like, with a hook going into the skin. I'm like, that's not too bad. But this really, like, this is like beyond body horror of like Saw, because Saw is like more gore, if anything, and I'm like, whatever. But I just don't do well with body horror, and it was like ugh, at some points I was like, this is like, a bit creepy. And it kind of goes down like almost like, I felt like it was going to go like a Carrie route at first, where it's like Stephen King towards the end, where it's like, setting up for like people laughing and doing this, but it went a bit beyond that. It went quite outrageously towards the end. I was like, this is a little bit, I was like, this is blending too much into fantasy. But generally speaking, I think like it was a very, very interesting film, very like commentary wise on point with like what it's saying in terms of beauty and expectation, and like, it's kind of like, again, clinging on to the past and like nostalgia as well, even like themes of like what made someone and how to kind of move forward. And especially deep dive into psychology of the mind. I think it was fascinating to watch it from that perspective. Demi Moore was great as well. Fantastic performance, to say, with Margot Qualley as well. It's good to see films like that still made, and it's like I'm kind of keen to like explore more of those films going into 2025. Like, it's easy to like do that broad stroke of like the paint, where I'm like, oh well, films aren't as they used to be, but there's still people that are making those kind of films. And it's creepy, and the sound is immense as well in The Substance as well. I was like, actually, I have a deep appreciation for some of the sound that was being played in this. I was like, dun, dun. I was like, that's nice. Give me throwback bits to the 90s as well a little bit. Would recommend it though. Would recommend it. So, for me and my brother were recently talking about it. It's kind of like, he was saying it's like, it's the film I'd watch once. I was like, yeah. It's like, once I've seen it, I've seen it. I don't think I'd ever want to be like, I need to go back and watch Substance, because it's like, that would be a tall order. It feels like I'm going back and watching it for a different reason. I also think it's a film that you kind of need to watch on your own, because it becomes quite wildly like a little bit uncomfortable if you're watching without someone else, because there's a lot of arse shots and among many other things. I'm like, I don't know, you want to be watching this with someone else, because
it's intense. Like I think you said it in the beginning, where like you had an interesting pick for your spread the arts, and like this is it's a good artsy fartsy but yeah, it gets pretty intense, man.
Yeah, it really does. So I think that'll be my pick, if anything. So yeah, we'll wrap up here as well. And yeah, thank you for joining us as well. This is the first episode of 2025. We're on the march to 100. Let us know what you thought in the comments. Let us know how you rank your episodes. It'd be interesting. So we saw a lot of people gauge on social media. It would be interesting to hear how you'd rank them. But yeah, hope you enjoyed the episode. If you are new here, one more time as well, please do drop a subscribe on the channel, turn notifications, like the video, share with your friends. We're almost at 1,500 subscribers. So if you can help us get there, that'd be amazing. And also, StrangeCast available on all podcast services. So available on Spotify with a video version, or Apple Podcasts. So go and subscribe over there. Go and follow us because you get instant access as soon as the podcasts come available. And also, please do rate us as well and follow us. It helps our visibility on those platforms. And yeah, big thank you for 2024 as well. It was an incredible year that we had in there. We obviously had a rebrand with the logo, which thank you so much for that for people as well, because it's like we play one that versus one. It felt like I was dragging that on for too long, and it's nice to kind of align us closer to what we talk about. But yeah, we'll be back later. We're back in 2 weeks from now when you get this. Sorry, 2 weeks? No, we're back in a week from now with Lost Records Journal, which is obviously going to be a big podcast for the next 2 months as well, 3 months, 4 months, and going forward as well. And also as well, StrangeCast will be back in 2 weeks, so we'll be back later this month. And obviously, again, we'll be talking about the anniversary of Life is Strange. One, because it's 10 years as well, and it's very exciting for us, especially as a podcast almost into its 4th year as well. So yeah, stay tuned, guys. Take care. We'll see you later. Bye.
Peace.
Ready for the mosh pit, Shaka Bra.